Maria Gaetana Agnesi, a child prodigy who mastered 7 languages and conquered 18th-century calculus. She authored the first comprehensive textbook on differential and integral equations, yet history remembers her for a witch. Why? A simple mistranslation. The bell-shaped curve she analyzed, the versiera, was mistaken for aversiera, meaning wife of the devil. But Agnesi was no myth. She was a pioneering genius who eventually traded her pens for philanthropy, devoting her life to the poor. Forget the mistranslation. Remember the mind that shaped mathematics. How does a geometric curve become a witch? Through a legendary linguistic blunder. Maria Gaetana Agnesi originally named her bell-shaped cubic curve la versiera, rooted in the Latin vertere, meaning to turn. However, in 1801, translator John Colson made a fateful error. He confused la versiera with la versiera, the Italian word for witch, or she-devil. Despite the mistake, the name stuck. Today, the equation y times x squared equals a squared times a minus y remains immortalized in textbooks globally as the Witch of Agnesi. Born in 1718 to a Milanese silk merchant, Maria Gaetana Agnesi was a linguistic force of nature. By age 5, she had mastered Italian and French. By 11, she added Greek, Hebrew, Spanish, German, and Latin to her repertoire. Dubbed a walking dictionary, her father exhibited her talents to European nobility. There, she debated complex science, mechanics, and philosophy, switching languages at the whim of her audience. More than just a prodigy, she was a pioneering mind destined to redefine the boundaries of 18th-century mathematics. In an era where women were restricted to the needle and the spindle, a 9-year-old Maria Gaetana Agnesi chose a different path. Before a room of male judges, the young prodigy delivered a powerful, memorized Latin oration. She didn't just speak. She demanded the right for women to pursue higher education in the liberal arts and sciences. Agnesi vowed to reject the narrow opinions of adversaries as things of no importance. This wasn't just a speech, it was a direct challenge to the foundations of 18th-century gender roles. By 1739, Maria Gaetana Agnesi reached a breaking point. Exhausted by the public spectacles her father demanded, and grieving her mother's death, she sought to enter a convent. Her father strictly forbade it. A life-altering compromise was struck. Maria would remain at home, but only if she could abandon theaters, balls, and profane amusements. This trade-off allowed her to retreat from society and dedicate her life entirely to her 2 true passions, religion and the study of mathematics. At age 30, Maria Gaetana Agnesi published a landmark of mathematical clarity. Her 2-volume work, Istituzioni Analitiche, spanned over 1,000 pages and synthesized the era's scattered calculus. Incredibly, this masterpiece wasn't written for the Academy, but for her 20 younger siblings. Maria even installed a private printing press in the family home to oversee its production. This textbook for youth would eventually reach the halls of Cambridge, unknowingly setting the stage for a legendary mistranslation that would haunt her legacy forever. In the 18th century, a bitter rivalry divided mathematics, Newton's dot notation versus Leibniz's D notation. Maria Gaetana Agnesi stepped into the fray, not to compete, but to clarify. Her revolutionary text, Istituzioni Analitiche, brought uniform methods to scattered conclusions. To ensure young students could truly grasp these complex concepts, she made a radical choice. She wrote in vernacular Italian instead of scholarly Latin. Agnesi didn't just study calculus. She built the bridge that allowed the next generation to cross into the modern age. How do you teach the invisible? Maria Gaetana Agnesi transformed abstract calculus into something purely visual. To explain the calculus product rule, she used simple geometric areas. By starting with a rectangle and increasing its sides by infinitely small amounts, dx and dy, she demonstrated how the new area expands. She showed that while the new area adds dy times x and x times dy, the tiny corner dx times dy is so small it can be neglected. The result? A clear, visual proof of the exact product rule. The differential of x times y equals x times the differential of y plus y times the differential of x. Maria Gaetana Agnesi's Istituzioni Analitiche earned unprecedented acclaim from both the secular and the sacred. Empress Maria Theresa of Austria gifted her a diamond-encrusted crystal box in gratitude, while Pope Benedict XIV sent a personal letter and a gold wreath. Even the French Academy of Sciences, usually closed to women, praised it as the clearest, most methodical work of its kind. Despite these honors, Agnesi eventually left mathematics behind, devoting her final decades to the poor and proving that her humanitarian heart was as great as her genius. In 1750, Pope Benedict XIV broke tradition, appointing Maria Gaetana Agnesi as a professor of mathematics at the University of Bologna. While the university was rare for accepting women, Agnesi's response was even more unusual. She never traveled to Bologna. She never taught a single class. Despite her name remaining on the faculty roster for 45 years, she completely ignored the appointment. With no interest in public academic glory, the world's most brilliant, phantom professor chose a quiet life of service over the prestige of the podium. In 1752, the death of Pietro Agnesi marked a profound turning point for Maria. Finally liberated from her father's social and academic ambitions, she made a startling choice. At just 34 years old, she abandoned mathematical study forever. She became so resolute in her new path that she even refused a 1762 request to review the work of the famous mathematician Joseph Louis Lagrange. Maria had traded the pursuit of equations for a life of service, declaring, "Now I have found better ways and means to serve God and to be useful to others." Maria Gaetana Agnesi's greatest legacy wasn't written in a textbook, but in the lives she touched through radical service. She began by divesting her wealth, selling the precious diamonds gifted by Empress Maria Theresa to fund her charitable missions. She even transformed her family palazzo into a refuge for Milan's sick and elderly. By 1771, she assumed leadership of the women's ward at the Pio Albergo Trivulzio Hospital. There, she oversaw the care of 450 patients until her death in 1799, proving her humanitarian heart was as legendary as her mathematical mind. Modern observers often ask why a genius would give it all up, viewing science and religion as rival forces. But for Maria Gaetana Agnesi, there was no contradiction. In her 18th-century worldview, strengthening the intellect through calculus was a way to marvel at creation. Later, sheltering the poor was simply a different way to imitate Christ with love. For Agnesi, whether solving equations or serving the neglected, the goal remained the same: a singular, lifelong devotion to God. 3 centuries after her birth, Maria Gaetana Agnesi's influence remains so profound that in 2018, both the Italian government and the Vatican issued commemorative stamps. The Vatican's design perfectly captures her unique life. It pairs her groundbreaking mathematical equations with a humble posture of prayer. Though she traded her world-renowned textbooks for the hospital wards of Milan, her scientific work remained a standard recommendation for mathematicians long after her death. To this day, Agnesi stands as a bridge between the pursuit of science and the strength of faith. Maria Gaetana Agnesi, a name etched in history as a mathematician, humanitarian, and genius. Yet one word often shadows her legacy: witch. This video unravels the myth of the 18th century's most misunderstood pioneering mind. Beyond the famous bell-shaped curve that bears her name, Agnesi was a polymath who defied the gender constraints of her era. From mastering 7 languages as a child to authoring a definitive calculus textbook, her true story is one of intellectual brilliance and radical devotion to the poor. Meet Maria Gaetana Agnesi, an 18th-century mind that defied every boundary of her era. A true child prodigy, she was known as the 7-tongued orator, mastering 7 languages by age 13. At just 9 years old, she stood before scholars to deliver a Latin oration defending a woman's right to higher education. Her mathematical genius culminated in Instituzioni Analitiche, a masterpiece written to teach her 20 younger siblings. This work bridged the gap between the rival notations of Newton and Leibniz, earning her a phantom professorship at the University of Bologna, an appointment she held for 45 years without ever stepping foot on campus. But perhaps her most famous legacy is a myth. Due to a translator's blunder, her turning curve was mislabeled the Witch of Agnesi, a name that haunts calculus textbooks to this day. Ultimately, Maria traded equations for empathy. She divested her wealth and spent her final decades serving the poor and elderly at the Luogo Pio Trivulzio, proving that for a true genius, strengthening the intellect is simply a form of spiritual devotion.